we can be sure.
Okay.
Percent. This is the second landmarks meeting for the month of March this year. We have two applications and one presentation. A presentation is simply that we receive information and we take note that it's been received. We don't actually have a motion to receive it or anything of that sort. I'd like to take a moment before we start. Anna, you're there? Yes. Can we see you? Can we see you live?
Yes, hold on one moment.
We have the sad duty to say goodbye to Anna and the very happy news that she is executive. What is the title?
I'll be the executive director of Friends of the Upper East Side, and my last day at Village Preservation is this Friday, so this will be my last meeting, but it's been wonderful working with all of you, and I hope to continue seeing all of you in other preservation things. I'll still be around, just not as frequently. So thank you all for having me and for sharing this with me. I appreciate it.
And we're very happy with what you're going to be doing. I've worked with that organization myself some. Anna is a secret resource. If I want to know something from the deep dark ages, I just ask her. And procedures and other things as well. So thank you very much. And we've enjoyed your what's been a rather brief time with us.
Yes, yes. And thank you, Chenault. I really appreciate all of that. It's been so wonderful to get to know all of you.
We wish you all the best, Anna.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for your hard work, Anna.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Do you have any comments for tonight? I mean,
No, I don't have any comments for tonight. We're just observing if you guys have any questions for me throughout, or
we will then, just in the interest of good order, demote you now that you've been lauded.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anna.
The way that we operate the meetings, we have a new presenter, at least one tonight. We have the presentation by the applicant, then questions and comments by the committee, by board members, by guests, and finally by the public. The public will please raise your hands if you wish to speak after the guests and the board members have commented. And Eugene will elevate you to be able to speak. With the applicants, please state the address of the property as you begin, and ensure to us that what is presented tonight is reasonably close to what will be presented to the commission. If there are changes based on our recommendations, that's fine, and we would not need to see them again. If there are changes that are other than our recommendations, we ask that you come back again to present those changes before going to the commission. The hearings are only for landmark issues, and if you have another concern about an application or its effect, we can guide you to the community board district manager, and he will ensure that you're put in touch with the proper committee or the proper city agency. It's important that any testimony be presented during the public session so that it's a part of that record. And then we'll review that testimony at the business session when the resolutions are formulated, and everyone is invited to stay for that session, and only members of the committee may speak. If there are members of the board here who wish to comment, there'll be an opportunity again before the business session begins. But preferably in the course of the discussion of each application so that things are more orderly. Everyone, please be as brief as possible, including committee members, anybody. Thank you. Okay, we can have the first presentation.
Okay, Chanel.
Reconstruction of the Merchant House Museum and exterior masonry and stoop. This is from the City Parks Department.
All right, and I've elevated Julie Fisher and Rachel Rosenberg to present for Merchant's House. If there's anyone else that you need on your team to present, if they could please raise their hand and I will promote them from the attendees.
Okay, you can begin when.
Okay, Merchant's House, you can begin.
Great.
If you have any materials, you can share them. You have control over sharing.
Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Merchant House Museum, it says, right?
Great,
And the
great,
logo.
thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm Julie Fisher from NYC Parks, and I'm here also with Rachel Rosenberg, also from NYC Parks. And we just wanted to let you know what the work that we have planned for the Merchant's House Museum, which, as I'm sure everyone is quite familiar with, is on it's 29 East 4th Street in Lower Manhattan.
Would
So the
you
goals.
start, please, but explaining how the Parks Department is associated with this.
Sure. The Merchant's House Museum is one of our many historic houses that we have on Parks in Parks portfolio, and they're managed through the Historic House Trust. And then, of course, there are also, and I believe Pi may also be on the call. Of course, the Merchant's House is managed independently for serving the public. Did that answer your question?
Oh, and you're responsible for the physical plant.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So the goals of the project are pretty straightforward. We want to really bring the house up to a state of good repair, making the building watertight by repairing the roof and gutters and masonry walls. In particular, we're reconstructing the front entry area, the stone stoop, the areaway walls, the sidewalk pavement, and metal railings. And then we also will repair and repaint the fire escape. As I'm sure everyone is familiar, the house is on East 4th Street, close to Cooper Square. And here you can see some images of the current conditions of the house. On the upper left, you can see the areaway and the sidewalk below, where the pavement has moved around a little bit due to the tree. And then you can see the west and south facades of the house, the entry stoop moving further to the right from the side and from the front. And then you can see the east and north facades on the far right. So a lot of the work is masonry repair. We'll be removing the stucco, assessing the brick, and repointing and replacing as required, and removing graffiti. And also, as I mentioned, the fire escape needs some work, and the roof, gutters, and cornices also require some repair. On the right-hand side, you can see that the cornice from the front, masonry as required on the front facade, and then a lot of the work is at that front entry area, at the marble stoop, the metal work, and the area way below. As you can see in this image, the area way, it won't end up looking very different, but we are doing a little bit of structural work to address some structural concerns that need to be attended to in the long term. And again, nothing will really be visible by the public once we are finished. We will be taking out historic material and placing it back. And you can see here underneath the front steps, the entry steps need some repair. So we'll be taking care of that and repairing the steps themselves as required. If it's absolutely necessary, we'll replace portions, but our goal, of course, is always to keep the existing fabric in place. And then here's just really a summary of all of that work with some detailed photos. In the upper left, again, the marble stoop steps that we'll be replacing, along with the support for those steps. Moving along the top to the right, the granite stone retaining wall that we'll be resetting, the brick that we'll be repointing, slate shingles that we will replace as needed. And then moving down to the bottom row on the far left, removing and then resetting the bluestone sidewalk. We'll be adding some concrete for structural reasons, which really won't be visible by the public. And then addressing flashing issues. And most of the work is on the exterior, but there's one small portion where some of the roof conditions have resulted in some damage to some interior plaster. We will be addressing that as well. And that really concludes the presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Just one question about the as the application, excuse me, the presentation is worded. It's more correct to say masonry and the stoop and stoop stairs and sidewalk rather than the stoop, right?
Yes. Yes, we set the titles early in the process, so it doesn't always necessarily pick up every portion of the
Just
scope.
like to have it according to what's going to be reported.
Yes.
That's fine, thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
Yes, Chanel.
Please.
Well, thank you, Julie, for this fine presentation, and I wish you the best of luck with all this work. Certainly when I was over there today, I lamented the graffiti. I usually, even graffiti artists will respect raw brick on a historic building, and they usually target painted surfaces, something that was newer. So, you know, it really is unfortunate that the entire side of the house is covered with that graffiti, but I'm glad to see that's going to be worked on. In terms of the front step, the stoop, the steps, I noticed that I saw the settling and so forth, and as you build that up and put those steps back into the place where they were at one time, it would seem that that would mean that the bottom riser is going to be substantially higher above the sidewalk than it is now. And so will the sidewalk be adjusted upward, not only because of the roots of the tree, but also to now align with the uniform riser dimension?
The steps themselves, we will try to keep as close to the existing condition as possible while making it safe for the public. they're not going to be able to conform with modern guidelines, of course, for riser height. And our intention with the sidewalk is to keep it as close to, the adjacent surfaces as possible.
Well, in that case, then, Julia's there with the new garden entrance from the new park next door. Is that a handicap? Pardon me. Is that a accessibility path that would allow people with disabilities to get into the house a little easier than the front steps?
That is an area where it is easier to provide a movable entry point, something that there is a step, but something where you could have a ramped access to get in at that point. So that is something that it's not part of this project, but it is something that is being worked on.
Thank you.
Brendan, go ahead.
Actually, Albert was before me.
Oh,
hand still
okay.
up. Albert? Maybe not.
I don't see his hand raised, Brendan. So
Okay.
why don't you go and followed by Anita?
Sure. Yeah, this is one of the jewels of the city. And I know that, relating to our work at Landmarks is the rezoning. And so there's two things. First of all, there was the proposed building that was really a threat to your structure. And first, I just want to see where that was. And then the new projected development, which has the opportunity to be very much higher. And I just wanted to understand where that, if you knew what status was on that.
Unfortunately, my focus is really on this project itself. So unfortunately, I can't answer those questions.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Steve Simon is on the call. He may have some information, but I do not.
Okay. And then just aside, this would be a good opportunity to bring like the Mather School in to watch the work happen. The Mather School is the historic preservation high school in the city, sponsored by the Advisory Council. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Cool.
And I'll pass that along.
Thank you.
Do others wish to speak?
Yeah, Anita.
Yes, please. Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Starting with the areaway, could you turn to some of the drawings on your, yeah, that's a good one. Go back to the one you just had. Yes. My question is, are you replacing the hatch? Are you able to hear me? Oh, okay, good.
Yes, I may defer that question to Rachel.
We are not replacing the hatch.
Okay.
The entire areaway surface that you can walk on is remaining in place. It's only the retaining walls that are holding the earth and the tree back.
I know, but that's kind of a romantic view when it's only 3 feet and you're digging a hole down 4 feet. But anyway, I just wanted to point out that you could maybe use it as an opportunity, whether it's to make the building a little bit more accessible if the elevation of that hatch had some adjustability. So it's just an idea I'm putting out there because this might be the only opportunity to make it a little bit more accessible from the front. The other concern I have is the beam that, if I understand correctly, the way it's drawn here, are those bolts or what are those little dots?
Yeah, those are fasteners.
So it's going to be steel,
Yes.
exposed steel. And
It'll
where
be
is the
painted black steel to match the refurbished painted black gate so that it's all the same color.
And is that going to be a headroom problem? You know, it's so
It'll
tight down there.
it'll be acceptable. I mean, we're keeping it as generous as possible.
All right, I'm just pointing it out. I mean, you can always take a look in the field. And the other thing is, I'm just not clear, and maybe it's just me, where this beam is. The concrete beam, the white beam.
The beam that
Where-
we're talking about is,
Yeah.
if you look at the middle drawing or the drawing to the right. Oh, sorry. So in
This-
plan,
You're gonna
it's
go back to
wrapping.
the other one.
Okay. In plan, it's wrapping around the areaway like a U, because we don't
Uh-huh.
really know what type of footing they may have installed under that areaway wall, but we think nothing. So we're using this opportunity to put.
So
a
you're not going
continuous-
down deep, actually.
No,
You're
it's
not.
really,
I
we
see.
think there's a stone there, so we're just replacing it with a continuous piece of concrete that you can then,
Is that the top piece, the top,
no, it's
curb?
underneath, it's to be
Oh.
underneath the level of the areaway floor. So you wouldn't
Oh.
see it from the sidewalk. You would only see the face of it when you're underneath the stoop itself, beyond the gate.
and right now it is what material?
It's stone, and we don't really have a visual of the size and material, but we're assuming that there's a row of stone block down there.
Well, it'd be nice to retain the stone or somehow, you know, concrete doesn't look the same. That would be my concern on that. And I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I just really want this to come out so great, and it's such an important building for us. The last thing, I'm really curious about the sidewall facing the new park. Could you turn to that photograph? Yes, the stucco. I guess my question is, A, why has it been there for so long? And when you take it off, are you going to need to do a lot of brick replacement? I'm almost attached to it, oddly enough, because it's just always been like that. But is that just plastered stucco directly onto the brick? Or are there attachments? No attachments, right? Anchors?
It's stucco directly onto the brick.
Okay, that's good.
We are assuming that there is deterioration behind there, which is really why we want to remove it.
Good, yeah. And try to source some good brick if that should happen, because you know the face gets damaged. That's all for me. I think that's great, you know, to get this going. Thank you.
Are
Thank
there
you.
others in the committee?
Brendan,
one
is
more-
your hand up again?
It is, yeah,
Okay.
one more thing. It might be worthwhile, well, at your discretion, to reach out to the NPS, because it's national landmark status. And just have them maybe take a look or get their advice, if you have not already, through the SHPO.
Okay, other comments? From the board? Are there members of the public who wish to speak?
Yes, Zella Jones wishes to speak. So once Eugene has moved her, there she is. Please,
Hi there.
Zella, go ahead.
Yes, we've spent many years discussing the structural integrity of the Merchant's House, particularly in light of the building to the west, the several buildings that have been proposed. So while I truly appreciate that the Parks Department is going to address the aesthetics of this building, what lies underneath is detritus, as far as I know, and allows the building to shift. And I'm concerned that whatever exterior cosmetic work you're doing here is going to be undone by any kind of structural issues that the building has. So I would appreciate your addressing that. Brendan has brought this up. I think I think Anita has in some aspects, but I'm a little concerned that there's going to be city money put into something that's aesthetically nice, but isn't going to save the building overall.
The one thing I would say to that is that I wouldn't characterize this work as aesthetic work. Of course, we want it to look nice when it's complete. But this is really work that's required to keep the water out from the top. And that is always a very serious concern for our historic structures.
If I can follow that up, Chenault, you've got a lot of work that's happening on that front stoop, and you're putting in a concrete slab that is liable to drop 6 inches the minute you leave the site. So I mean, there are some things here that I think need to be addressed a little bit more thoroughly for the sake of the integrity of the Merchant's House overall.
May I suggest, Zella, that this be addressed directly to the Parks Department, because what we're dealing with what has come to us, which is this application of this report, and for this work, and surely there's other work that will be done and needs to be done. It's just not part of this, of what's here, but it's correct to point it out. But we can't do anything about it now. So if you were in touch with the Parks Department directly with the concerns, that would be the most direct, seemingly.
But aren't we still involved as a landmark in our district in the outcome of this?
We are, but what we're doing tonight is considering what they have brought to us as a report on what is being done. Other things are being done according to the presenter by other people, and they're not the ones who deal with that, so that we're expressing the concern, but to no official end, as it were.
Understood. Thank you.
If there are no more comments, are there the public? Were other hands from the public? Susan? Okay. We
Hi,
will move.
my hand raised.
There's Valerie has her hand up. Valerie?
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
Valerie, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Zella is bringing up a very important issue that I think is relevant to this application. So I'd like to make sure that it's part of the committee's discussion during business session, as well as included in our response in the resolution. Thanks.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this presentation? Okay, thank you very much, and we'll move on.
Thank you.
Eugene, you will find the people from 11th Street. I'll read the application.
Yes.
11th, the application is to construct a rear yard addition, enclose a rear terrace, modify openings in the rear facade, add a canopy, deck, and garden stairs to the rear facade, and replace the rooftop condenser units.
Sorry to interrupt you, Chenault. I
Yes.
see that Jeffrey Rowland has written in the chat, am I being ignored? And Jeffrey, please let me assure you that you are not being ignored in any intentional way. I guess your hand must have come up later in the game. So I think we should circle back and hear
Okay,
what
sure.
Jeffrey has to say.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes,
Please go ahead.
It may be too late, only because I was going to ask for a more thorough explanation of why the stucco is being removed and why is it assumed that it may be damaged underneath it, and does that include the stucco that appears on the photos, appears on the rear underneath the fire escapes? And so I wanted to know more about that, but you let the presenter go, so I don't know that I can get answers.
He explained that the reason for removing the stucco is to see if there is indeed damage, and
Right, which I was
Jeffrey,
concerned might cause damage.
Jeffrey, the presenters are still actually
Yeah, we're
here.
still on.
Just a
I
moment.
was concerned that the removing of the stucco may cause the very damage that you're wondering if it's there. And I wondered why, as stucco is usually there to prevent the damage, why it isn't just being patched or repaired.
She said that it was being removed in order to inspect the brick. That was her statement.
Jeffrey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so
Oh, you're
if you
there
look-
still. Helen.
I am. If you look on the, what side is that? On the east side, right below the stucco, those bricks that are the 4 widths below where the stucco ends are particularly deteriorated, which suggests that water is coming from behind the stucco and causing spalling on those bricks. So we have pretty good evidence that the stucco is not a watertight, it's not doing any favors to the building in its current position. And since so many bricks around that area need to be replaced and repaired with repointing, it just makes sense to do it now as one piece.
Are
It'll be
you
more
planning on
consistent.
replacing the entire stucco with the wall after you take it off? Are you putting it back on?
The stucco will no longer be on that facade. So
So
we will be
there'll be-
re-exposing the existing brick, and we hope to, I mean, it would be great if those bricks were in excellent condition, but as far as the contract is concerned, we're assuming that we'll have to replace to match the surrounding brick.
Historically, was that stucco not there and it was added
Correct.
afterwards?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. I appreciate the answer. Thank you very much
welcome.
for recognizing me, and I'm done.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. We'll move on to the next application now.
Okay, I've read 260 West 11th, so when the presenters are up and ready.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, yes, we're here. Go ahead. We hear you.
Can you see my screen all right? Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Eric Millward from Millward Architecture and Design, and we're the applicants of record for the project. The project we're going to be presenting today is at 260 West 11th Street. It's between West 4th and Bleecker. The original federal style house was built in 1830. Third floor was added in 1872.
Excuse me, are you able to adjust your screen share so that we're have the full screen of the actual?
Sure.
Yeah, that's that fun. Thank you. That's ever so much. Nope, that went
Is that better?
there. That's ever so much. Oop.
All good? Very good. Thank you. So the original owners or the current owners of the building undertook a major restoration effort in 2005, where a lot of the original details were restored. At that time, a new 2-story rear addition was added. This application proposes to modify this addition from 2005. Additionally, we're proposing to replace the condensing units on the roof. As stated, the project is towards West 4th on the south side of West 11th Street. And the block is a mix of apartment buildings and row houses. Zooming in a little bit, we see some of the adjacent sizes of the buildings. Directly to our east is a single-story addition, a cluster of buildings here, 4-story, 5-story buildings directly to the east. To the west, there's a 4-story building and a 3-story building. South from Perry, a larger 6-story building. And just another bird's eye view, just giving a little bit more context. Plot plan, again, outlining the various heights of the buildings. Our original 3-story building on our side is shown in blue here at 260. The lavender 2-story addition from 2005, and then our proposed addition or expansion of that two-story addition is sort of hatched to the right. On the site plan here highlights in red the proposed addition on the second floor, as well as a new first floor deck. Of note is the proposed addition won't increase the building footprint. There won't be any change to this, what's left of this central green space. We're not proposing any excavation or change to the existing yard levels. So some mock-ups here you can see in orange. So the addition will be partially visible from the street from limited vantage point, looking southwest across the street. The top of the proposed brick wall, the side brick wall, is visible. Working with staff level at LPC, we have modified our design somewhat to reduce that height and the visibility, just by detailing that wall to have a smaller curve rather than having a taller parapet.
Sir, could you go back just
Sure.
one? I just want to get these things correct. Is this your building at the right of the picture?
Correct.
So you're seeing the extension behind yours. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. All right. So now some views from the yard, looking north. You can see the existing two-story addition here. This white colored clapboard style. Again, this is from 2005. We've dotted in red here the extent of the proposed intervention. This third view here shows the larger 4 or 5-story buildings directly to the property. Some more context shots. To the west, you can see the portion of a third floor rear yard addition at 262 West 11th Street. The existing, the addition from 2005 does not extend beyond that addition. Few views looking down. So look from the roof, looking north to 55 Perry Street. And on the left side of this photograph, you see the larger building on 4th Street, West 4th. Looking directly down here, view 2, you can see the existing roof of the existing addition. And then you see the terrace, the small terrace off the second floor here above that. And finally here, again, seeing the third floor addition or extension on 262 West 11th. For reference here, looking at that second floor terrace that we are proposing to enclose, and some detailed views looking in various directions. I'm looking at a few of the details that we will be modifying on the existing extension. Now look, here's a mock-up of the air handlers. Again, these are visible from different angles from West 11th Street. The existing units are visible. The ones that we are proposing, we will be pushing them back further west so as to minimize their view from the street.
And can you just say what the things that are?
Of course, I'm sorry.
What the construction is.
Sure. So, yeah, so we have the existing, so view this image 3 here, we have existing dunnage and that will remain. In orange here, you see the netting of the proposed heat pumps that will be replacing these older condensers.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
So there are the existing condensing units that are on the roof.
These are condensing units that we're seeing.
And they will be replaced. And the new units that we are proposing, we will push those as far to the west as possible. So they'll be less visible from the street. So you can see them slightly here in these views. Again, looking at the existing elevation, some context elevation showing the neighbors, and again, just highlighting the condensing units that we will be replacing. Right, the rear addition. So this is obviously where the majority of our work is happening. Some context of some neighboring context. You can see to the right, the second floor here, the terrace that we will be enclosing with our proposed renovation. So the proposed renovation will have horizontal siding similar to the existing version, as well as a simple painted wood cornice. On the second floor, the existing 6/6 double hung windows will remain, and we'll add a third window in the expanded area that will match those ones. On the ground floor, the new opening, the proposed new opening will match the height of the existing, as well as the width of the outside of the existing double hung windows. The new canopy overhead is also being proposed for shading purposes. The existing landing and stair to the yard will be replaced by a larger metal deck and metal railing with a bluestone pavers on top. Our east elevation, existing east elevation, looking past an existing brick parapet wall to the doors to the terrace. You can also see the landing and the stairs to the yard. The proposed intervention has a brick side wall here. You can see the canopy extension there above the windows, along with the new deck and stairs to the yard. We are proposing sort of a lighter gray hardy plank siding for the back, painted wood cornice, the brick on that east wall to match the existing brick of the original house. The windows will match their existing black painted windows, and the new ones will match that as well. Along with, and then some bluestone pavers on the terrace, on the deck. For reference, just looking at some floor plans, no exterior work to speak of on the cellar level. On the first floor, you can see the extent of the initial landing and stair, and the expanded deck, stair, and opening. Second floor, you can see the terrace here, the top, along with the sitting room here, the new sitting room, which is basically enclosing that terrace.
And it is where your arrow is now is where your arrow was there. Is the brick wall?
You're correct.
Okay.
Correct. Third floor, again showing the new roof. And finally, on the top floor, again showing the dunnage and then the new condenser. With that, thank you for your time. I'll turn it back over to you guys for any questions you might have.
Could I just ask one thing before we have questions? Could you go back to the rendering of the proposed that's beside there? Okay. The lower floor here is the basement level, is that correct?
It's technically a first floor.
Okay, so because there's no parlor.
Correct. There's a cellar.
Okay, so you're calling that the first floor and then the
Correct.
second floor. Okay.
Correct.
And because there was some reference back. That is a little balcony that runs across on the lower right-hand side in front of the new windows.
Correct. This is the railing to the deck off the first floor. To
Okay.
to protect it from the drop off to the rear yard.
And above that, the two windows on the left side, that's simply recladding and then continuing the architecture along, right?
That's correct. So we're trying to harmonize the second
I
floor.
think that's all clear. Okay, if we can have questions, please, from the committee.
I just have a quick question. Did you say that the existing rear addition was built in 2005?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Albert has his hand up, and then Brian after Albert.
Question about the basement level. Are those windows, or could you describe that?
Sure. So it's actually a cellar. It's not technically a cellar, not a basement. Here we're just basically cladding the vertical edge of the deck, along with the stairs to the left here. On the existing, there is a window well that's well spotted. There are windows there. In our plan, we are proposing a walkable glass panels in that area to bring that light down to the light well in the cellar.
And those that will be across the entire structure.
No, it's really just in the corner here. So if you see, there is a light well here. It does bring in some light. So we are going to try to reclaim some of that with the walkable glass panels.
Then that just plain glass in is it glass framed, or what could you describe it a little more?
Right, it'll be a textured glass. It will be translucent, so it will have a slip coefficient, so we're not slipping on it. But it'd be similar to other walkable skylights where they do take load, so they're tempered and they're well suited for walking on.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Brian, you're up next.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate the presentation, and I must say it's strikes me as being a very restrained kind of remodeling for this house. And I appreciate that. The front facade is basically intact, and there's very little of the back that's seen. I was noticing, unfortunately, that the dunnage is hanging over the roof, or it's on top of the parapet wall, and is unfortunately very visible. And it's but that's an existing condition, and it's not going to change. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, then, and I appreciate the fact that you're moving those new heat pumps as far out of view as possible. So other than that, I'm fine. Thanks.
Thank you.
Are there others?
No, there are not. Nobody from the public has raised a hand, and committee is done. So I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Eugene, if you will arrange for Spring Street, please. 170
Yes.
Spring Street, the application is to replace storefront infill and construct a roof deck and replace the stair bulkhead for access. I'm going to eliminate from access from the description. That's clearly what a bulkhead's for. Okay, when the presenter is ready.
Okay. Okay. Hi, everybody. Can you see my screen?
It's fine. Can you do whatever it takes to make the presentation the full screen.
Yes, yes. Does that work?
I guess so. It must be the proportions. Yes. Okay. It's bigger in any case.
Okay. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Pounds. I'm presenting on behalf of Tom Winter Architects. Our project is a proposed alteration to the landmarked building at 178 Spring Street, which was built as an Italianate style 5-story tenement building in 1854. It's in the Sullivan-Thompson Historic District. Our project proposes to replace the storefront at the first floor and create an occupiable roof deck and bulkhead to access the roof deck at a code compliant minimum. Here on this slide, you can see the 1940s tax photo on the upper right and views from the street on the bottom. Let me go to the next slide here for a second. Sorry. Hold on a second here. Okay. Okay. Here's the location, highlighted in blue here at the corner of Thompson and Spring Street in the Historic District. Here we have the 1940s condition on the far left, the condition in the middle at time of designation in 2016, and the current condition on the far right. Here is the existing roof. On the upper left you can see a little bit of the rear and side facades from the street, and highlighted in red is the portion that we will be extending to be level with the front of the building. On the upper right is the existing bulkhead, which we'll be replacing. And on the bottom right are the mock-ups that we have built for landmarks to review. On the left here, you can see the view from the street with our mock-up on the roof. And on the right is a photo montage of the completed building with our proposed storefront at the first floor and our bulkhead up on the roof, as well as our fully restored front facade, where we are repointing and restoring the brick, as well as the existing molded brownstone lintels and sills, replacing the windows, and restoring the historic wood cornice at the top. And here's the same view just north up Spring Street. At this point, you can see the glass guardrail is visible. We stepped our glass guardrail back from the street, so it's not visible from directly in front of the building. And here you can see the view just west down Spring Street. And here you can see the view just a little bit south and west of the building, just south on Thompson, where you can see a partial view of the existing side and rear facade and our fire escape extension on the roof. Here we have existing and proposed front facade elevations, existing proposed rear elevations, and the side. Here you can see our glass guardrail is projecting only 2'8" from our proposed parapet wall, and our bulkhead is projecting only 8 feet from the parapet wall. And here you can see our section. This is our code compliant minimum bulkhead on the right versus the existing non-compliant bulkhead on the left, which we're proposing to replace. And on the bottom right, you can see our typical detail for our glass guardrail, which we are attaching behind a low masonry parapet so that the only portion that's visible from the street is glass. We're trying to minimize its impact from the street. Here we have a map showing the precedents which we based our design off of. In gray, we have precedents in the area for similar bulkheads. And in pink, we have precedents for storefronts in the area. And in green, we have a precedent for glass guardrail directly across the street from our property. Here you can see on the left at 178 Spring Street, this is a block just north of our property, a pretty prominent bulkhead here. And you can see it was in existence in the 1940s tax photo. And then on the right, you can see a pretty similar, we thought this project was most similar to ours. This was a landmark approved project bulkhead addition. And then similar bulkheads in the area. And here we have the glass guardrail precedent. On the left is the view from the street. And I'd like to note here that the impact is very minimal of the glass. The most that you can see here, at least in our opinion, is are the posts, which we don't have in our design. So we're kind of going for this in the street. And then on the right is that same glass. This is a view from our roof. And here we have material inspiration for our bulkhead, metal panels, steel panels. And here we have the existing condition at the first floor and the historic condition on the bottom left, and detail photos on the bottom right of the existing cast iron piers, which we have probed to reveal the historic cast iron. They're originally covered with stucco. We're going to restore them to the original cast iron state. And here we have our neighboring storefront to the left and right of our storefront for context. And this is a rendering of our proposed storefront. You can see our restored cast iron piers and columns and our restored wood painted cornice and storefront infill behind. And here we have existing and proposed storefront conditions with our adjacent storefronts. Details of the storefront, enlarged plan on the upper left here, and then detail elevations to the left and right of the stair going down to the cellar on the right. And these are storefront details at the commercial and residential entrances. These are precedents for storefronts in the surrounding area. We focused on the cast iron piers and large glass openings that are pushed to the rear of the piers and similar colors of the storefronts. And here we have our material palette. At the top, we have materials that are going to be used for the occupiable roof. And then on the bottom, the materials for the storefront. And I will leave you with our proposed rendering from the street. Thank you for your time.
Okay, a few questions to get right what was presented. The roof is being leveled off, and the increase in the parapet height is to make a level parapet above the roof, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
And the railing that goes around three sides of the building, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you say there are no supports?
There are no supports. The railing will be held in a aluminum shoe only at the bottom of the glass, and the shoe is going to be fastened to the side of a 10-inch tall masonry parapet wall that just projects 10 inches from our walkable surface.
And how high are the glass railing?
The glass railing, the portion of the glass railing that is visible from the street is 2'8" from our parapet. The glass guardrail, the overall height from our walking surface is a standard 42 inches or 3'6" high.
So it's 2'8" above the new parapet top level.
That's right. And the parapet height is determined by the existing level of the front of the parapet. It's
Yeah,
currently
okay,
sloping down.
understood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And could you go to that rendering of the ground floor,
Yes.
the close up, as it
Mhm.
were?
Yep.
Okay, and is there's I'm looking at the columns,
Yes.
and then they are floating and the glass is behind them, is that correct?
That's right.
And there's a space, oh yeah, the shadow would seem to show it. Okay. Fine. Okay, questions, please, from the committee?
Brian, go ahead, followed by Albert.
Thank you very much. Well, I have two main areas of concern. One is on the roof and the other is the front storefront. So as far as the roof portion is concerned, I certainly don't have any objection to the bulkhead. It's a necessity, and there's plenty of examples around the neighborhood that are like that. It's I would say the railings that come up, and you mentioned that the front railing is set back from the cornice, but the side rails, are they inside of the parapet wall or are they above the parapet wall?
They're the glass, they're fastened to the inside face of the parapet wall, but they're not stepped back. So only the front railing is set back from the street. It's about 30 inches from the street, so that none of the glass is visible from directly in front of the building. But for the side of our site is visible from the street, and it's because of the length of the visibility. It's always going to be visible no matter what.
Sure.
So
yeah, I mean, that was obvious by your mock-up, the netting, and I could see that from the street very easily. So
right.
I'd like to then go to the front facade of the storefront. And the first question is, how much of the existing storefront is the fabric, the historic fabric of the original building or time of designation or the 1940 picture that you showed? How much of that is remaining?
The piers and the columns are all historic fabric, actual historic fabric. The cornice is new because the existing cornice, or the historic cornice, was removed in the 60s. So we would be restoring the cornice to a state that is similar to cornices that we've seen from this era of buildings and storefronts.
And the stairway going down to the basement, is that the kind of cavity that was there originally?
There was the existing storefront did have a exterior stair down to the basement. You can see it on the upper left here. We have plywood up right now just because for construction reasons. But that is the existing condition of exterior stair, and you can see the historic condition was also an exterior stair going down in the bottom left. But the historic condition had a sloping wall going down directly above it from the street, and there was only a glass transom above it. And we're proposing to push the storefront back so that to extend the actual visible storefront further, so that there's more usable storefront from the street.
Okay, and the header for that opening, not only is it pushed back, but it's raised up. Is that correct? It's a much bigger opening now proposed than it is existing.
I'm not sure. Let me go back to the rendering. The header. Can you rephrase that? Sorry.
Yes. So the existing header is about halfway in the height of that storefront open. And then it used to slope down, but at any rate, it was
Oh,
out
yes.
of space as well. So
Right.
that's a very dramatic change, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around that aspect of having that, I don't know, glass enclosure setback. But now that I understand how much is changing from the original fabric and style of the building, I'd like to move over to the center portion and to maybe steal a little thunder from Brendan, which made a very good suggestion. I would say that it's much more typical and much more historic to have the glass in front of those spindly columns. And that, so that kind of forms a bay window. And then
Right.
the door itself can be set back like it is for, so you have a landing at the door and so forth. Those exposed thin columns just do not sit right with me. So I'm hoping we could revisit that. But I think that's, oh, and one other thing, it looks like it's being changed, that storefront is being changed from something of a bar or restaurant to retail. And that means that there won't be any kind of structure in front of the steps or out on the curb. Is that correct?
No, there will not be any structure in front. No. No.
Thank you. That's all I had.
Also, just to address something that you were noting, I guess part of the design intent with the storefront was to simplify and really just to emphasize the actual historic piers and columns. So it could definitely be possible to have the columns be enclosed, but we chose to keep it in line just to simplify and to emphasize what was historic. Or that was what our intent was.
Thank you.
Albert, go ahead.
Yes, I have 3 questions. The first is about the color. Since everything is painted the same color except the metal entrance steps, is that an accurate rendering of the color?
Yes. It's a gray that has a greenish tint to it.
Okay, thank you. Now the next question is about the basement entrance. Is that to be a public entrance?
No. It would be for residents or for egress only.
I see. And is there a door down there?
There is a door down there, yes. And you can see in the rendering, there would be some lights down there to keep it lit. But part of this is also making this somewhat a public space because it's a little bit of an unusual condition to have such a large space that's open to the public like this.
Yes.
So part of that also having the glass there also makes it more visible and more of a public space, which is beneficial, we thought.
And the door is not visible from the sidewalk.
No, you can actually see I think you can see this slight gray tint here is the door. The door is on the side of the wall. So you would be able to see a little bit of it, but other than that, no.
It'll be a great spot for hanging out and making deals.
It already is.
It already is.
Yes.
The third question is, of course, about ADA access. There doesn't appear to be any.
Right.
Those two steps are quite high.
Right. Well, this is the existing condition, and we thought that preserving the existing historic condition was the focus of the design. And there are also many historic storefronts in the area that are also not accessible. So it wasn't a focus of the design, and it's not required by DOB. So we did not propose it.
Not required. Okay. Thank you.
Anita. You're muted, Anita. I know you want to speak. I think we've lost Anita for a moment. Brendan, why don't you go ahead and we'll circle back to Anita.
Sure. Good proposal, Christopher. I want to start with the bulkhead.
Okay.
All good. The slant, I think it should be, I think you could think about it being square. It would fit in more with what's going on in the views and with the neighborhoods. Everything's pretty square, and I think this kind of stands out with your material choice. So that's my comment. It's not a big comment. I don't think this neighborhood has the requires the type of integrity that other streets do. Personally, I'd rather see it be brick or stucco. And then for what Albert just mentioned regarding ADA, every now and then a lawyer comes around and sues these establishments. And so the solution that's been devised by the neighborhood is to put a button that you can press, and then someone will assist getting in. Now, that doesn't really work so well. I thought this would be an interesting opportunity. I guess they bring out a ramp. This would be an interesting opportunity to make a ramp that engages. Since you are doing something with the diamond plate, it could be a pretty cool invention to just like, okay, it goes right into a slot. And that could be a good precedent for these other buildings, especially with heavy wheelchairs. So there's that comment. And then for the actual glazing of the storefront, these little like 4-inch diameter, 5-inch diameter columns are very cool. They're not really prevalent in this neighborhood, but I think they probably were on like 2nd Avenue, where they would form bay windows, and then you have a vestibule going in, and you could put dresses on all these different sides.
Right.
So I see you've got a standpipe sprinkler issue.
That's right.
So, but like Brian said, the original concept, the historical concept, to my understanding, and you might have done research otherwise that contradicts this, is that those were interior. So that's,
yes,
something to take a look at. Also the breaking the symmetry with that large showcase panel. I would just like to see that be behind at least that one mullion behind the column or closer to it. And if you have to do a secondary panel where the door is, I think that's preferable. Third, I appreciate the diamond plate. There is some historic cement, it seems, underneath there, soon to becoming historical cement, and I don't think that gets enough appreciation. So those are that the header, the steel header, that's all behind stucco right now. So when I went and took a look, I couldn't really tell what's there. And it was concerning because the left side of the building is failing. You've got a bulge on the second floor and it cracks quite far up. So it's going to need like some structural tieback or something like that. So is that a new structural header that you're putting in there?
No, not in front. Well, first I'll respond to the structure. There is definitely some settlement on the left side of the building. You can see it. I don't know if you can, let's go back. There's some settlement in the front of the building with, you can see the window headers are tilting slightly on the left side. So part of this will be, there's going to be structural work in the rear of the building, which will help stabilize this building. But to address specifically the structure in the front, we actually had a version where we were replacing some of this structure and making it basically a facing for new structure in front. But we decided to keep the existing structure. Our structural engineer on the job has looked at it, and we're confident we can tie the existing front facade back and stabilize the structure enough that it won't be an issue. And the settlement, you know, as far as I understand, and I'm not a structural engineer, but when the settlement has occurred, most of the time it's done, and it typically won't go further once you've done your stabilization work. Anyway, that's, again, I'm not a structural engineer, but that's my understanding of it. Does that answer your question for the structural?
Yeah, I mean, the structural isn't so important to us at this point.
Okay, so, and for the let's see, the existing cornice is gone, as you can see here.
Yeah.
And as far as we can tell, there is nothing left of it. So we're basically trying to recreate something that looks similar from the historic photos. And in terms of the diamond plate is, as far as we know, it's just a ubiquitous material in the area that we thought would help it blend with other storefronts in the area. But the historic cement, I'm not sure. You know, it's to be totally honest, it's very difficult to tell what the existing condition was. It probably was stone potentially, but it could have been concrete. I think we've had conversations within the office and with our landmark staff person that maybe it was bluestone, but that could be something that's worth exploring.
I don't think you need to try to go back to the stone. I just think that I think it's fine personally, and I just don't think the historic cement gets enough appreciation. Even if it's from the 40s, it will be historic at some point.
Right. Well, I think there was one other thing you mentioned. I'm trying to remember. I think it was about the projecting the columns in front.
Yeah, which would require moving the standpipe sprinkler connection. I don't know if it's called a standpipe or a fire connection.
It's a fire department connection. Yeah. No, it's not existing. We're proposing it. But it's possible that could be integrated in another way. But it did help to have the storefront located back where it was. And to all of your points about the historic condition, I mean, you can see the historic condition was those columns were behind the storefront, where you have the piers, the historic storefront, you have the recessed entrance, and then there's the sort of picture window that projects in front of the round columns. It seems like that is the historic condition. But again, our focus was, instead of returning exactly to a historic storefront, was to just emphasize the historic material, which is why we chose to put it behind.
Yeah, if that's the plan, I would make a strong suggestion to move that, to hide your framing for that showcase window behind it, even if that means adding an additional panel. Because I do find that to be a little bit.
Okay, can we?
Move on.
We can talk about that in
Yep.
the business session.
Thank you, Christopher.
Okay, no problem. You're welcome.
Anita.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry,
You're
I had a
muted.
few technical, can you hear me? You can
Yes.
hear me, right?
Sure can.
Okay, thank you. Good, good. Okay, a lot of things have already been said, and we can talk about them in detail, I guess, at the executive. I would like to say that there's like a missed opportunity here, a couple of them. One is it absolutely, in my mind, must enclose those delicate columns. And it would right away be a nod to the historic storefronts of this type of building. I think this building is being confused with Soho and Gansmart and industrial. And that's the wrong, I think that's not the right flavor for the storefront. I would much prefer if the storefront, the glass comes forward and the level change now becomes a bulkhead. So now you've actually given the building a bulkhead, which is something that we do look for typically, even if it's a smoke and mirrors thing, but it raises it off the street. The other thing is the thing with the door and the paneling, and I agree, Brendan, it really catches the eye kind of in an odd way, is that it should angle in. The door should be recessed. And again, that could be a modern, but nevertheless, a very strong nod to the historic storefronts that we find all over this particular historic district, not West Broadway, not Soho. So I would say to recess the door and, if at all possible, bring the ramp inside. Just bring it inside. You're doing a lot of serious work if you can, and if there's no electrical panel right under there, but if you can, get into the store and then ramp up, and you'll have a very clean one, and you won't have a lot of nuisance lawsuits. I would say, let's see what else. And also it's very steel. Again, I think the vocabulary is a little off. The doors are very industrial. And I think we should be cognizant that this is an old brick building. I don't know what the year was, 1850s maybe or something. It's not
That's right.
Yeah, okay. good guess.
1854.
Okay, yeah, so this is an old row house. This is not a tenement building. It's not a manufacturing building. It's a nice, sweet row house that has a little bakery on the ground floors.
It
So,
was, sorry,
go
it was actually, it was built as a tenement, but yes, it's, the scale is row
yeah,
house.
that's the vocabulary, the architectural vocabulary.
Yeah.
It may have
Mhm.
been divided up, into little apartments,
Right.
but so that's it for me. I'll save the rest for our executive. Thank you so much.
Can I ask, just so I know, the ramp idea that you wanted to propose, I guess, were you saying that you were thinking it should ramp into the space or ramp in
The
front?
ramp should not be on the street because you're going to run into a whole bunch of problems here, I think. I don't
Yeah.
know how big the store is, but you have no landing right now at the door. This door should probably even swing out. So you have a lot of issues here that are potentially dangerous. If you could bring the door to the retail down to the street level.
I see. Okay, now I understand.
And
I understand what
recess
you're saying.
that, you have a
Okay.
landing, and then you ramp up and you make it work somehow. And you'll never have this nuisance that almost all the store owners are dealing with, which is these nuisance lawsuits.
Lawsuits,
And
right?
also, it really doesn't keep the spirit that, this is the opportunity. ADA, what the spirit of the law is that you treat people with accessibility needs the same as everyone else. Having to ring a bell, bring out that, people are busy, that's, it might work in a pinch in a lawsuit, but it's really not ideal. So.
Sure.
Okay, that.
Okay.
Thanks, Anita. Brian, you're next.
Yeah, I just had one follow-up question on the front elevation you showed of your proposed design. It looked like the inside of that basement stairway vestibule is brick. Does that mean you're exposing the brick, or what are you showing there in that render?
On the side is going to be stucco,
So
and
it's
it's
going to be
existing stucco.
brick colored stucco?
No, it's a sort of off-white, dark gray stucco.
If you would bring up 26 or that front elevation.
Sure. Let's see. Actually, okay. Front elevation.
Keep going to the street view rendering.
Okay. Oh, right.
Yes.
This view.
That's-
Yes, that is a brick colored stucco on that one wall. Yes.
Okay. And we're seeing in the other windows the white painted interior finish.
Yes.
So the side of that basement stair opposite the stucco is going to be a solid wall. I thought you showed it as glass in one of the other renderings, but in this rendering, you're showing that the right side of the going down into the basement is a solid.
No, it's glass. It's glass. You see the white, you're seeing the white wall going back in the space. So this right here is the white wall going back in the space, but this is a glass wall and a glass wall. So let me see.
What's at the back? What's at the back of that stairway going down into the basement? What do you see straight in front of you as you're entering?
Here, let me show the detail view. I think that might help. The plans here, you can see. So this is glass, glass, and glass, and then right here is the white interior sheetrock that is furring on the wall. And then right here is the existing brick wall, which we're adding a layer of stucco on.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else from the committee who would like to speak?
I would if all the other members have spoken.
Looks like it.
Okay, could you go back to the rendering, the close-up rendering of the ground floor?
Okay.
Yeah. Is there any example anywhere else of this appropriation, as it were, of the service entrance to be show windows?
The appropriation of the service entrance into the storefront?
Yeah, where there would have, we saw the original and existing
right.
Service entrance to the basement.
Not really. There isn't really honestly, there aren't any examples that we could find of the historic condition either necessarily. It's kind of it's an original condition.
Yeah, that's not the point. If we could go back
Sure.
to the
Okay. Sure.
That this looks, there's something very unsatisfying about it. Certainly moving the windows out, but it's like a plugging in modern storefront to a historic framing and columns, and indeed the historic stairs down. And it's neither nor. we've seen example where they've simply cleared out everything and put in some sort of a plate glass front.
Right.
And this is like a messy combination of the two, amplified by the sort of truncated way that the upper level looks in relationship to having it set back.
Sure.
I don't have a solution, but
Yeah, could I just
looks
respond to the,
it looks like it was cleared out from the back and then a whole new building built inside the shell is well, they don't relate somehow. And much of it has to do with this cutting back of, in order to for the clear commercial purpose of having more show space.
Sure, right.
Perhaps even not having the right-hand window as you go down a window, but a wall, so that there's a separate dedicated thing. We'll try to figure it out in the business session.
Okay. I think just to address the sort of in-between nature that you're addressing, that it's neither giant plate glass or more historic. We're proposing an insulated storefront, so it will have some degree of thermal performance, unlike single pane, plate glass window that you see in,
not that.
So, I'm sorry, what was that?
Thinking about the aesthetic result of what's been proposed.
Right. No, I'm just explaining why it is a thermally insulated glass storefront. Unlike, I feel like I may be wrong, but it sounds like you're referencing frameless glass storefronts. Am I right?
No. What I'm saying is that it's a combination of arguably a very modern plate glass infill,
right,
set behind, using the historic thing as a picture frame.
Right. That's right.
The
That's
picture
right.
frame with something behind it, and the something behind it doesn't relate to the front.
Right. Well, the idea is basically that the modern storefront is really attempting to be as not there as possible, to recede from the historic material as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. Susan, did
Yeah, Eugene, if you could give Pete Davies the talking stick, that would be great.
Okay.
Followed by Jeffrey Rowland.
All right, Pete, you should be able to speak.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I just want to echo what Nita said, and some others have said, that the industrial look really, it doesn't exemplify the Sullivan-Thompson district. And I think even though the idea is to make the storefront recede, the bulkiness of the steel is almost overriding the columns, and the placement of the steel doesn't support the columns, it competes with the columns. And then I just have a question, which is about the standpipe. I understand that is something that is needed, but it doesn't seem to be part of the application. Is that reviewable, or is that something that the committee doesn't address?
That's a good question. I'm not honestly sure. I think if under landmarks, any alteration to the front of a building has to be reviewed, but if fire protection is required, I think it's required. So my understanding would probably be that it's more about location and how it's located exactly. But that would be my understanding. So
We've had them from time to time and taken them as a given, and here it seems to be an interfering with something that we're suggesting doing. So, but it's certainly possible to reconfigure it.
right,
There has to be
definitely.
one more sorted
You made
way.
my point, Chanel. Thank you. And thank you all.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Pete. Eugene, Jeffrey Rowland is next.
I will, yes, Jeffrey, you should now be able to speak as well.
I think I can. And I probably have to take exception to some of the things that were said about the iron and the columns. And the reason why is I've lived in this neighborhood around the corner. So I live in the Sullivan Thompson Historic, and I've lived here for 54 years. And when I moved in, I actually used to see a lot more of these slender columns. There is one currently next door in the very restaurant next door. Now, admittedly, it is inside of the space, but when they open their doors for dining, they're quite visible to the public. And also a block north of that, there's M&O that has a column right on the corner that you have to go around to get into the store. So it's not uncommon for me to have seen many of these columns exposed. And I do think it's kind of nice to see them. As to the iron, my own building that I live in has iron columns in the front, flat iron columns. So does the building next door to us. It's throughout this area, you got to see the iron columns in quite a number of places. They're painted in different colors. In my case, it's brown, but I don't think that matters whether it's gray or brown or black. So I don't think that it's the wrong thing to have them outside and exposed to the view of the community. As to whether the glass is between them or behind them, or whether there's a ramp cutting in, I have no concern about that. But I do not want to see those columns covered up, because I don't think that's the right look. I've been there for, as I said, 50 years, and I've been looking at that ugly glass block for an awfully long time. I don't think there's anything unusual about the entranceway down. That's very typical of what many of the places used to have. Now they've all been closed over with steel gates, much like my building. But that railing and steps going down from the street, that's really common. And so I see no reason to change that. And it's not bothersome that you can see through to the store. In fact, that may prove to offer some safety to the tenants, the residents, and the neighborhood, just that the fact that that stairwell is not so darkly enclosed that anyone could be hiding it. So I think that the glass backing of that is a good idea, as it may provide additional lighting. I don't have anything else I can add to that, except to point out that those columns do exist in this community. So you may think of it, iron as only being the cast iron Soho district, but iron was widely used in our district too. It's just a lot more brick was used here, I think, and not as bulky iron, because they weren't building huge manufacturing buildings. But they still, all these first floors have these iron beams across the front of them, and it's very common. So I don't think there's a problem with the iron. Thank you very much for your time.
So speaking
Thank
for,
you.
for what I said and what others of the committee said, we in no way were suggesting to hide the columns. It's a question of whether they're in front of or behind the glass. Thank you.
All right, Chenault, I think that's it for raised hands.
Okay. Does anyone from the board wish to speak before we begin the business session? Indeed, it's been a little bit confusing. Does anyone at all need to speak on the record before we start the business session? Okay, we'll begin the business session, there being no reply.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher.
Okay, Merchant's House. I got what they're going to do. Oh, Zachary has a face now. I've been looking at your name all night instead of my face. We want to make just a statement of our concern about the construction next door and that the building's being protected. Is there anything else that people wish to say about the presentation?
Okay, so I've been doing some research. It's the Historic House Trust that is overseeing this. And I'm just not sure how the New York City Parks Department is involved. But they have really expressed on their website that they've got some issues, some structural issues, particularly if they're worried about when adjacent development. So I just don't think it's a bad idea for us to like, if we could put something in there, just get in touch with the National Park Service through the State Historic Preservation Office. I'm sure Rachel is, they probably have been, I don't know, if we could put something in there.
Don't need to go far away from what is before us, as is true with any application or presentation. They're presenting a discrete part of what is the entire looking after.
Right, but as I understood
and we've had this question of the building next door and the concern for the.
Sure, but as we heard from, the pros here, Anita was worried about the structure. So, and the tie back, might not be bad to do an overview.
Could I just jump in briefly? Yeah. I just wanted to say that this work is absolutely necessary. There's nothing to wait for. We never know when things are going to happen and another 10 years go by.
Right.
A pull away from the building. It's a common problem. And this one, whatever they're doing, I think is quite minimum. So I would approve it.
And they didn't purport to be giving a comprehensive engineering or anything else. So they gave what they gave. And the record will simply show a list of what they gave and say that we have concern about the integrity of the building, particularly in view of the construction next door.
Well, that's not gone ahead yet. So this has nothing to do with that. This is waterproofing. I mean, yeah, it might move later, but these are old problems and they won't get better if the house moves. Anyway, I've said my piece.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Valerie.
Thank you. I agree with Anita, and I think I would reference anyone who is newer to the committee to the December 2020 resolution of the adjacent building. That's when this committee last received testimony about all of those structural issues. So I'm sure that that's in the record with written testimony, a transcript from the merchant's house. And there's language in the resolution that, just the fact that it's a New York City individual landmark, as well as on the New York State Register of Historic Places and the National Register of Historic Places, and just putting that in there. And I believe there's a couple other that those concerns have been we've outlined those concerns in our position. So I will drop that in the chat, and Chanel, I'll email it to you directly.
Thanks, Valerie. Chenault, are you there?
Sorry, I'm sneezing. I'm back.
Bless you.
We're concerned with and referencing the prior resolution. I have that. Is that it for this, for the merchant's house?
I think so. There are no other hands raised.
Let's do the rear addition and then the condensers. In the end, I heard no objections to the remodeling of the rear addition. Is that True.
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 And the condensers, we assume we regard as minimal visibility. And further
Yes.
visibility, you sort of have to look at it. And everybody's so busy looking at the house that's beside it that they're not going to look back there anyhow. That house holds the record for the amount of time it took to remodel it. The neighbor. So that's approved. Spring Street. If we could go, it occurs to me that we can say so, but that we didn't mention our preference for metal railing if we want to express that when it comes to the railing. The first thing is leveling the roof and raising the parapet. I heard no objection to that. And there's the stair bulkhead. And it is where it is, and they presumably have made it as small a footprint and a bulk as possible, given the necessity of if I understood, it has to be changed because the rooftop is going to be occupiable and would
Also,
not.
Chenault, the applicant mentioned that the current bulkhead is not code compliant. And he stated that the proposed bulkhead is the minimal size in order to be code compliant.
So it is not a function of the rooftop being occupiable. It's simply not code compliant.
It may be both.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll just put for code compliance since we don't know. Okay, the glass railing. Do we object to the glass in this instance?
In this instance, no, but does it affect the precedents that you guys are worried about uptown?
I only recall talking about it in the context of village.
Yeah.
So if we want to object,
Well, the problem is always the reflections. And maybe they have non-reflecting glass, but I think glass by its very nature is reflective. So
through that, I think
I,
we made as a policy that all glass reflect whatever.
yeah, exactly.
That's
So
been
I don't
my
know. Also, I'm looking at the mock-up. I mean, you have so much kind of, a stair bulkhead and this, it's all pretty industrial. And then you have this slick glass thing. I would definitely prefer just a simple metal railing.
Would this be a case to, rather than deny unless, to recommend that the railing be changed to metal?
Yeah, simple,
Yes.
functional.
I
Functional.
would certainly support what you just suggested.
It would be more appropriate.
Thank you, Albert.
I don't have an opinion on this.
I'm glad you're using that word more and more.
Oh, yes. Once a night.
And it certainly is, and we recommend that because it's in keeping with the neighborhood and the building.
Also
Exactly.
also I think Anita's point about the reflectivity, right, I think that's been the previous position of the committee, right, is that it draws unnecessary attention to itself.
Yeah, it's also highly visible in this particular building. I
And
don't know if that, I mean, you can see it from everywhere. So it really will catch the light.
The sun, yeah.
Eugene, can you put up that the rendering that we were looking at the end when I was doing the questioning? I think all the questions of the.
Sure, hold on, let me just get it up on the screen.
we certainly have discussed all the points. We just need to decide what to do on them. And when he gets it up, we'll just go in some order. Is header the correct word for the structure that goes all the way across the building?
Yeah, it's a header, a beam.
At the storefront.
But there's a big steel beam behind the cornice there because that's what's holding up all the brick above.
Yeah, I'm talking about the sign band, as it were.
Chanel,
Yeah.
which,
No, we're in the
Storefront.
next application.
oh, sorry,
It's
sorry.
called storefront cornice, technically. The wood cornice they have above the storefront. Is that what you're asking, Chanel?
Yeah, the place where a sign would go.
It's called, technically, it's called a storefront cornice.
That's
I
what
just
they have
happen to
written
know
there.
that.
That's in their drawing, wood cornice.
But storefront, because it's not the main cornice, so I
Mhm.
think it helps to add that word.
But wood, that's a
Okay,
little bit of
in any
a,
case, we can work while Eugene's getting the picture. We don't object to that. There seems to be universal agreement that the window should come forward.
Absolutely, 100%. And
Strongly.
there's a few other changes that I think must happen. This is not a good addition to our streetscape, I'm sorry to say.
Okay, let's
So
go
I
one.
really,
Um,
and it's pretty bad now, so I know everybody's happy to see something change, but still,
we don't
can be
accept
better.
better than bad, as we want it to be the best it can be.
Right. It
Excuse
also
me,
should be
Chanel.
wood. I mean, it's a wood
I-
storefront originally.
We have the storefront corners, the window coming forward, with adjustment of the standpipe.
And
Chanel,
remove
excuse
all
me
the
for
metal
a minute.
plants.
By
Sorry.
the time we discuss each and every element here, it occurs to me that there may be precious little left that we would be in favor of. So I just bring up for discussion purposes whether or not this should be a flat out rejection with an articulated series of reasons why, or whether we should go element by element.
I think that's where we're going to end up.
Well, I think, I mean, we're going to deny it. Is that correct? I mean, I think that's what I would want. And we can make all our comments about why, but it needs
Yeah,
to
okay.
go back to the drawing board.
So our first comment, accepting Susan's premise, if everyone's agreed, these are the following reasons that we reject it, which are going to be most every element. Enthusiastically scrolled. The
Mateo.
that the windows should be in front of the columns, the glass. That the entry should be at street level with the interior ramp. We need to say that because it's one that we promote as part of what remodeling these buildings is. Is that agreed?
Yes.
yes. Historically, there would be a low bulkhead
Well, the bulkhead can be the step up. Those two
Yep.
steps is the perfect bulkhead. Especially if it looks like it's paneled and, but we really don't need to design it for them. That's the problem.
No, these are objections to what is.
Well,
The-
this is a unusable entrance, if I want to be blunt. There's no landing at the front door. I mean, these are like, you have to have a proper landing. There's issues.
It's just that the entrance,
I mean, I have to just say, I mean, I didn't want to bring it up because thank you for all the other members that did bring up the issue of accessibility. But, an opening like this is particularly hard to navigate. There's no railing to hold on to get up those two stairs. These new doors tend to be extremely heavy. And so navigating up the stairs when you have a disability and also trying to leverage the door open is particularly difficult. And so if there is a way to make this accessible while they're doing the renovation, I'm very much for that.
okay, that's included.
And also the overall industrial choice of materials and detailing. I don't like the metal plate there. I think the framing is very metally. There's no meat on those doors. They're also extremely high because the transom actually would have come down lower. But I understand why they pushed it up.
Well, this is
So-
essentially what I was saying about the shadow box of the modern thing behind the remnants of the historic forward part.
What was that, Chanel? I
Industrial
didn't
building.
understand.
That was what I meant by this shadow box thing of another structure being built inside the building.
Oh, I got you. Yeah. Well, it's just, it doesn't, there's so many, I like, by the way, the open glass to the store where the stair is. I think Brian's right. It's going to make it much safer. It's just going to be, or somebody says, I'm sorry, I don't remember who now, maybe the public. So that's a good idea and it's good for the store. But there are so many opportunities to give nod to these really special little shops that were all along Spring Street and Prince Street in this district. And it doesn't have to mimic it, but it would be nice to give, a nod, proportions, measurements, things that
Can
could
we
be
then,
new.
can we say we approve the retaining of the cellar stairs, having basically denied the design?
But are we being asked to approve that it's already there?
Yeah, but they might have said they wanted to close it up, which has frequently happened.
I think
uh,
if I could go back to my two concerns, and the one is the access to the cellar, which should be limited. I don't know if we can ask for that. There should be at least a gate, limited access. And the other, of course, is how do you get up those two steps in a wheelchair?
You don't.
Valerie, you've been very patient with your hand up.
I try. Thank you so much. I'd like to really thank the committee members that brought up the accessibility. If we're not being asked to opine on that specifically, I think it's important to any chance that we get to address that concern. That's a big issue in our district. The Economic Development Committee has been doing a series on the ADA Title III lawsuits by serial plaintiffs, and we'll be doing our third series. I'm actually going to push this month to April. We've had Madam X come in, which is on Houston Street with a below grade stairway entrance, and we had a lawyer come in and speak about what businesses can do to be compliant. And then we'll be hearing from the disability advocacy community in the next round. So I'll make sure to share that with this committee because both landmarks has come up in our discussion as well as SLA. So thank you.
Are there other specific things we want to say about the shortcomings?
Yes, one more concern, Chanel, is with the monochromatic look. That everything is the same color, even those slender columns. It would be, and I think it would be appropriate if the columns were, of course, if they were restored to the original, that would be great.
Yeah, I think when they go inside, they typically do become a different color.
Usually white or black.
Yeah.
But we're going to get this back again, I hope. So
Of what, Anita?
I said I would hope that we get to see this application again.
Well, yeah, that's the conclusion of all this. That when we have such a blanket denial, the recommendation to the commission, which is what we're making, is that it returned to us with a modified form before they entertain it. We're asking them not to hear it until they come back to us, rather than them to come back to us.
Sorry to interrupt you, Chanel. I think also it would be good for us to include a kind of conceptual umbrella for our position. And I think a basis for that is that what we're seeing is kind of a mashup of a contemporary storefront with some existing historic elements and some non-previously existing historic elements, and that in this kind of jumble of ideas, even though they're commendably honoring some historic elements, the result is completely disharmonious with the building. That storefront is not a thing unto itself. It sits within a building.
And a historic district.
I took that down as dictation. Any other comments?
Well, we didn't really talk about lighting and so on, but I think that's too much detail at this point, almost.
Certainly at some point, if at some point we could put in like no huge video screens, because Soho is becoming Times Square and there's just video screens everywhere in all of these storefronts.
That's another
that's a monster.
Other world. They didn't propose anything. And it's that 18-inch thing that there's a wall there, and
again, video screens go.
I just want to be clear that we have recommended everything above the storefront as approval, except with a strong suggestion that the railings changed to metal. For the good reason that it is appropriate for the building and the district.
Sounds good, Chenault.
Yes.
And we are rejecting the storefront for the assorted reasons that we put out, with a sort of overriding of Susan's last comment about its being an unholy combination.
Well, we have a lot to say, so I'm sure we'll find out. I'm sure you'll have enough to pinpoint what's wrong with this.
Yeah, Brendan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, as Valerie mentioned last week, I think I heard him say residence. Like, I don't think this is a conversion into a single family. But I don't know.
No, they put in the plans. It seems they're making a fancy one on the roof. A fancy.
Oh, just one is becoming.
I believe that's what it was.
Okay.
The plan didn't, I don't think that meant that to be a single family.
Cool.
Okay, I'm sorry we ended up with 2 meetings, but maybe it was just as well. This one was so complicated. We had a fallout or there was some reason we had 2, and then we suddenly ended up with 2 partial meetings worth. So we always try to consolidate it unless it's going to shows evidence it's going to be too long, or if an application comes in on the Friday or Monday week before the Monday meeting. Okay, thank you all. And
Chenault, before everybody goes, I sent out an email right before this meeting about the symposium on Wednesday, the Historic District Council. It's about landmarks and affordability, or affordability housing. And Mark at our CB2 office was good enough to reach out to them and got a discounted price. It was originally $75, and CB2 board members, or I guess public members too, can attend for $25. That being said, I'm not sure I got everybody on the email. Chenault, maybe you could check, because I couldn't get some of the emails to work, and I'm not sure who they belong to. But if you can, send an email to Mark.
I'll forward it to our whole.
Yeah, could you? Because I was fussing with it and I couldn't figure out the email. So anyway, that's something that we need to get out right away so he can secure those spots for us. And it's like from 9:30 till 12 noon on Wednesday. It's a Zoom, and I think it's very relevant for our committees.
Yeah, thank you, Anita, and thank you to Mark Diller for that. I mean,
yeah,
as everybody knows, I feel so passionately that we must at every opportunity clarify that being advocates for preservation is in no way antithetical to us being advocates for affordable housing. And I think the more information that we can have to support, the fact that, these things are not mutually inherently oppositional is incredibly important. So I expect this will be a very valuable symposium.
And when did you send this, Anita?
I sent it right before our meeting tonight.
Okay,
because I got word about the discount, and I thought that makes it more affordable for everyone.
Okay. I'll find it then. I'll know where to look for it.
But the symposium is Wednesday, so we have to answer by tomorrow morning. So it's all very, got to decide.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
That's it.
You can dismiss us, Eugene.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Mm-hmm.
180.